Hi, everyone. It's Deborah Hamilton. I'm so glad you're here tonight. It has been such a busy day, and this topic is so near and dear to my heart. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation. I help people resolve conflicts involving animals. So anywhere they happen, which you might now think is many places, but it happens everywhere between family members, between owners and breeders, between veterinarians, groomers, kennel operators. Anywhere a conflict comes up, I help people resolve those conflicts without resorting to litigation because it doesn't serve anyone, especially the pet. So that's what I do in my day job. And in my Wednesday, first week, and third week of the month, I am here at my wonderful MAAP community where I help people resolve the planning that they need to make for the long-term and short-term care of their pets. So those of you who've been here before, you know what MAP stands for, but I see we have a new visitor, my new LinkedIn friend, Jay Lewis. Welcome, Jay. It's a mnemonic I use because it really helps people understand you're to map the journey your pet takes when you can't care for it because you have to get from point A to point B. How are they going to get there? So you have to make a plan, appoint caregivers, address the needs of your pet, and then publish that plan. And every year, you need to schedule a check-in with all of those people so that they all know what the plans are. You know your plan is still good. You know your pets are still the same as they were last year, or whatever has changed, you change, because it's so important. So I help everyone grab a comfort zone on what it is they may be faced with when it comes to the care of pets. And if it's your pet, if it's someone who's asking you to take their pet in the event something happens to them, if it is your parents' pet, your siblings' pets, anyone. I mean, all of us know about people who've passed away with pets, either expectedly or unexpectedly, and no one knows what to do with the pets if something happens because nobody left directions. Nobody left whether or not there were plans for the pet, or there's medication the pet takes, or if the pet is good with other dogs, not good with other dogs, good with cats, not good with cats. A horse that spooks at wind or it doesn't, because we talk about all the animals. We talk about parrots, who, by the way, live to be about 40 to 60. So you better have a plan if you have a parrot. So I'm glad all of you are here tonight. It's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. I do speak at a number of independent living facilities that allow residents to have, 20 to 30-pound dogs. And it's amazing to me that in those independent living facilities, they take the name and address of the person who's going to come and take the dog if the resident gets ill, and never check in. So if they check in 1990, and they're still alive and still kicking in independent living, they're not necessarily, the dog might still be there because some of our little dogs, those 20-pound guys, live to be 20 years old. So they've been there 10 years. You haven't checked in. Will that person be able to take the pet? Who knows? I mean, some of you have been on here a long time, since 2020, when we started doing the MAP community program, know that people's lives change and they forget to raise their hands and say, oh, by the way, I just moved into a townhouse from my big house with a big backyard, and it only lets me have one dog. And they forget to tell you that. And they're one of the people on your list. So tonight we're going to handle what you do in the event that you have a loved one, or you yourself might be incapacitated either for sickness, or just because you can't take a dog for a walk anymore, but you still want your dog with you. What can you do? So I'm going to check in with everyone. We do this. You're not obligated to check in. When I call your name, you can tell me who you are and what kind of pets you have and what you do, and whatever, or where you're from, and that'd be great. But if you don't want to, I'm happy to let you slide. No worries. So I'm going to check in with some of the oldies but goodies who've been here since almost the beginning. So Jan Jeremiah, how are you in Tonka?
We are well, thanks, Deborah. Yeah, just trying to navigate this really nasty weather up here in the past few days. Yeah, but
I
otherwise we're good. Thanks.
Good. I know it's been terrible. It's been really bad. Susan, how is Maggie?
Yeah, Maggie is good. Feeling like maybe we're breaking through some of the issues that we've had with Maggie. She's an incredibly strong dog and she has a correspondingly strong bark, but I think I'm hopeful. We're
Well,
good.
I'm going to do a golf clap that we're making progress.
Yeah, I think at times I feel that we are. Of course,
Perfect.
that could change. Yeah, I'll let it go at that.
Well, thank you. Kathy, are you able to get on and tell us, if how Gracie and Emma are doing?
I'm fine. The girls are fine. So I tried a new dog sitter. They had some separation anxiety, but we're okay. And I had to use another one today, but it was somebody I knew because Michael had a procedure and we were in the hospital. I didn't know how long we'd be there. So Anne came and let the girls out and left me a note saying they were great for me.
Yay. That's always gives you peace of mind. Absolutely. I'm so glad. And I hope Michael's procedure went well and that all is good. I'm going to go to Stephanie, another regular. How is Yoda, Stephanie? Everything good?
Yes, Yoda's doing great. We're having some like odd weather here over in Toronto, kind of like a lot of wind and rain, and it's supposed to snow again as well tonight.
It's
So
April. Didn't they get to know that? I know a friend of mine sent a picture of her house in New Jersey today, and it had snow. And she said, this looks good on December 24th, not on April 4th. So just sharing with you. So I hear your pain, Stephanie, but I'm so glad that Yoda's good and you're good.
yes, thanks so much.
Perfect. Michelle, thank you so much for coming. Do you want to tell us why you're here, who you are, and what kind of pets you have and what their names are? As you can tell, I know everybody's pet's name. I'm sort of good that way.
Hi, I'm Michelle, and I have Romeo. He's a little Pomeranian. I was here once this summer. I work for.
Oh, I remember your dog's name. Isn't that terrible? I'm sorry, Michelle. I remember Romeo. I said, wait a
I
minute.
came
We had someone who came here named Romeo.
once
like-
last summer, and I just haven't been able to get on your. I'm on the West Coast, and I'm at work. So don't get on here very often, but I work for Meals on Wheels people. So
That's right.
yeah,
That's exactly right. So thank you so much for coming back. And I was hoping you'd come back. I remembered Romeo. My apologies. But then when we're in the dog park, we only remember people's dogs' names anyway. So I'm just
yeah.
that is a given. I'll remember everybody's dog's names. But I'm so glad you're back because this would be near and dear to your heart because
Yes.
these are discussions that people need to have with themselves if they're older and they have pets, and with your parents or your family, because you really need to make that plan. There's a woman in Australia, Jennifer Howard, who I wrote to her today and said I was going to be using her name. She's in Australia, so right now it's like the middle of the night, so she wouldn't be on the call. But she has started a Safe Pets, Safe Families program, where she creates the places where they use students to help provide organizations, Pause with Friends initiative focus on supporting older individuals and their pets, and they keep the pets with the people, which that's my biggest thing. I really don't want to take somebody's dog because they're older, but they might not be able to walk them, like I said. They might not be able to remember to feed them. They might have dementia. However, if you're having a caregiver come in, then maybe you could also find, either a high school student or someone who can help with the pet to keep the pet there, because I know from experience that a dog owner of mine really had lucid moments while she was traversing dementia when she had an Irish setter with her, because she remembered, oh yes, this is my Irish setter. Do you know how I had Irish setters? So she was really grounded. And it was really important to her. So I know how important it is for us to keep our animals. So I'm so glad you're back, Michelle, and my apologies. When you said Romeo, I went, I know somebody with a Romeo. Sorry. And Jay, I know you're new because I just met you through Jan, and I'm so glad you're here. And you don't have to talk if you don't want to, but We just are glad you're here and hope you get something out of today's program, because it really is important for all of us. So from what I know of Jay, he is someone who helps people who are going through difficult circumstances, end of life circumstances. Is that right, Jan?
Jay is a grief empowerment coach, so basically helps people through the grief process.
And that's so important.
Or loss. I mean, but that could be losses other than,
Right. Other than pets, it could be across the board, but none of the losses are irrelevant. All the losses are really important. And it sometimes is very hard for others who may not have an attachment to animals the way, say, I do, to understand that I could go into grief mode for months, losing a dog or losing. And I know, Kathy lost one of my dogs, and the grief was huge because it was something that was, very near and dear to her heart, and went through a lot of life's deepest moments with her. So the grief counseling is so important, whether it be for your family or for your animals. And I'm looking forward to having some time and talking with Jay offline. So I'm so glad you're here, Jay. But tonight, for the bulk of it, I'd love to have some input from all of you on your thoughts after I give my little bit of a spiel. It's really important, if you know anyone or if you have someone in your life who is going into assisted living, independent living, that you help them create, maybe it's you, you help them create a plan to keep their pets with them. Because as I work with a number of independent living facilities like the Adria, and there's a bunch of them, the name's escaping me. I'm going through dementia probably, but it's okay. I have so much in my brain. I always ask them, you should really bring in dog walkers for these people. Yes, it's really great that the people get out and walk. However, bringing a dog walker in so that they could have an heir and a spare. So the MAAP plan stands for Make a Plan, Appoint Caregivers, Address the Needs of Your Pet, and Publish. Well, if you create in your facility the ability for someone to keep their pet with them, or if that won't work, allow their pet to visit, because the amount of comfort that people get seeing dogs. I know that there are some animal behaviorists who would argue that the pet seeing the owner and the owner seeing the pet could be really emotional. I'd love to hear what Michelle thinks about that. Really emotional if they've been separated. And yet, if the situation is set up beforehand, and unless they're suffering with dementia, they can't tell, and that's always difficult. I mean, it's a case-by-case basis. You can't say, oh, this is how you do it, and this is the way it goes. If you can set it up where they understand that the dog is in a great situation, the cat is in a great situation, the bird, the horse, the turtle, whatever it is in a great situation, and it can come visit you so that you can keep that connectivity. I know when I brought my Irish setter over to see Wilma, it was for a brief amount of time, and it really brought her so much joy. Now, it wasn't her Irish setter that I brought, however, she thought it was. And she didn't get agitated when I left with the dog, because she knew the dog, look at the dog's well taken care of, it was happy, but it gave her the opportunity. We all know, well, maybe not all of us, but we probably have read an article or someone has told us, but become aware of the fact that therapy dogs go to assisted living, pretty much not independent living, but assisted living, and nursing homes. And the people in the nursing homes wait for those dogs to visit. They love those dogs to visit because it hits them where their heart is. This just looks like Scruffy, or, it does look like Scruffy, but boy, he puts his head in my lap the way Scruffy did, or whatever occurs. It creates that endorphin release that they need, and that cortisol release that they need, in a good way. They're not agitated, usually in a good way. And if the dogs, it's amazing. I work with the National Dog Show Therapy Dog Symposium team, and I've learned so much by being at the last 5 symposiums. They're wonderful. And anyone who has a therapy dog should really think about attending it in November in New Jersey, because it is always wonderful. You can't bring your dog with you, but it's really about people learning, not dog learning. And it's amazing how the dogs tell their handlers what it is and when it is they should see people. They'll pull them to people who the dog sense really want the dog to be there. And the handler has to be really astute to understand whether or not the dog feels that person wants to be there. And you have to read your dog, because there are people who may or may not be up your dog's alley, and you need to listen to the dog. It's always about listening to the dog. And a lot of times there are dogs that are, very outgoing. And then there are dogs that are less outgoing, more particular. The handlers have to know that. And I think one of the classes we had at the last symposium talked about when the dogs are done, either for the day or forever, right? They just don't want. Hi, Jay, how are you? We see you. Good.
I am so good. I finally got a chance to fix it. I apologize to everyone. Great conversation. Please continue.
Oh, no worries. We're so glad you're here. So they have to know when the dogs are done, either for the day or forever. And just because you want to be a therapy person with a therapy dog doesn't mean your dog wants to be a therapy dog, and you need to listen to them. So I love going to this symposium, but again, it's the same thing when we're talking about people who are transitioning. So they're transitioning from home to independent living. They're transitioning from independent living to assisted living. They're stepping down. Does that really mean they need to get rid of their pet, who may be a lifeline? I don't know anyone who has a pet. I do know a lot of people who are in their 60s or 70s who, when they lose a pet, they say, well, this is my last one, because, I probably won't outlive my pet, so I don't want to leave it. However, anyone who has a pet understands that they're the reason we get out of bed in the morning. I mean, sometimes it's the only reason I get out of bed in the morning, because Junie says to me, I have to go and pee, and you better let me out. So I think that if we can facilitate some kind of care for the pet that will enable people who may not be physically able to care for the dog to have someone help them, either a family member or, cottage industries jump up everywhere. And I know it's sort of, the privilege, they can afford to do this. However, there could be some not-for-profit who comes in and helps people in nursing homes who have pets, especially the older pets, right? Because family members don't necessarily want to take the smelly dog with the bad teeth when you're going into the nursing home. They really don't want to take it. So what can you do? You can always put the dog to sleep, which is unfortunate, especially if the dog is, pretty healthy, other than for the smelly teeth. You really have to figure out what to do if you want to. I'm not casting aspersion on anyone who makes the choice that's best for their family. And if you're really thinking about what's best for your parent, grandparent, being able to keep the pet in their lives while they are transitioning from independent living to independent living in a, facility to independent living with assistance, this is something that I would highly recommend. And Janet Hoy Gerlich, who, if you follow her on Facebook, she also is starting a huge push toward, One Health and enabling people to keep their pets with them. She's a social worker who deals with the pets of people, people and their interactions with pets. I'm building a whole list, so I will put it up on my webpage for Hamilton Law and Mediation, so you can all access it, because there are people out there who are starting this, who recognize the need for people to take care of our pets when we might not be able to short-term, long-term. For those of you, I think I spoke about it last time, Michelle. Jay, you've never heard it. There are the 10 Ds. Death is only one thing you have to prepare for when it comes to caring for your pets. You have to prepare for disasters. You have to prepare for disease. What if you get cancer and you're praying to the porcelain goddess? I mean, it would be really nice if you had somebody there to walk and feed your dog, but you certainly want your dog on your bed with you while you're feeling like shiitake mushrooms, right? You really do. Yet that might be a 6-month period. And do you want to give your dog away in that 6-month period? I don't know anybody who wants to give their dog away when they're sick. They want their dog there when they're sick, but they have to think about making that plan before they get sick. We have to plan for disasters. So all of us live in some area that has shitty weather. Sorry about the expression, but we do. We either have
We
snow.
just, you know, we just had a tornado in North Carolina.
Yeah,
A
right.
tornado about
why I have
4 hours ago.
That's why I have a safe room in the basement. Are you kidding me? And it's in the dog kennel. So you know the priorities I have. My dogs will always be safe because they'll be right, and the dog kennel is hardly ever used, but I know that if there's bad weather, I will put them away first. And then if God forbid we have to take to the cement building, they are right there. We just pull them out of their kennels and they're right there. Our disaster is huge. You have to be able to take your pets and move. I talk to horse people all the time. The last program we had, the third Wednesday, was about what to do with your horse if something comes up. And you have to know that deployment is an issue. So a lot of our pet owners are wonderful members of the armed forces and get deployed. And there's a good number of organizations that help them find people to care for their pets while they're deployed. And that's great. But what if your deployment is extended? Can that person keep it for the extended amount of time? Do you have an heir and a spare, so to speak, right? You need to know that there's somebody there who is going to take the dog going forward. You need to know if you get divorced. This is a big one. These are things that come across my desk every single day. You're getting divorced. And when you got together, either one of you had a pet and you both took care of it for the past 3 or 4 years, and you love the pet and they love the pet. And, I had one where they had bought jewelry with the pet's name on it, and then decided they didn't want to stay with this person anymore. And so took the pet. And she goes, yes, but she bought me jewelry, recognizing that I love the pet and the pet was important to me. And it was like my child. It really is something you need to plan for while you still like each other. So you have to plan for it when you're in divorce. If something happens to you, you can share a pet. It's become clear to me that you can share a pet if you break up. I guess unless there's some domestic violence, which is a whole nother discussion that I guess I'll have one Wednesday. But you can share a pet and never see the person again because of Google Calendars and Uber, or any pet transfer person or any dog walker or a neighbor. Drop it off with my neighbor Sue, and then I'll pick it up with my neighbor Sue. It can be done, and it's for the benefit of the pet, because if you create this one-off where you go to court, you spend $10,000 to get the pet, and you're awarded the pet, and something happens to you, where does the pet go? Does it go back to the person who really wanted it as well? So it's always better to work together. So let's see, we had deployment, we had disease, we had disaster, we had dementia, we had divorce, we had
death.
Oh, yeah, no, death is the given, right? However, everyone knows that you can't just leave all of your money in your will to give to your caregiver, because if it goes to probate, it could be a year or two. And if you have horses, if that money doesn't get to the caretakers, the horses can really be threatened. So you need to always have a trust outside the will with enough money to keep the animals in care, and tell your power of attorney to pay this person for caring for your horses long term. So before we run out of time, I would love to go around and ask all of you your thoughts about tonight, because it really was important for me to explain that making sure that if you are going into long-term care, independent living, that you make a plan for the care of your pet. And if you can, make it so that you can keep the pet with you, because that's going to make your quality of life so much better. And it can be done. It just can sometimes seem overwhelming to the person who might be the caregiver. However, we can work it out in a way that makes it not so overwhelming. So I'm going to start with you, Susan. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Keeping that connection going when someone's going through a transition like that. I can't imagine having to give up their beloved pet. It's like you said, a lifeline for that person to keep that animal. And, you know, if they've got rheumatoid arthritis or whatever it is that's causing them to go into a assisted living or whatever facility, it would definitely be in their interest, their welfare, to be able to keep their pet and also the pet's welfare. So, yeah, it's hard to think about those
I know.
situations,
I
but
know. Writing it down or making that plan or talking about it, sort of like when you ask somebody to talk about planning for anything. So Jay, I'm going to go to you. So planning for anything never happens because they don't want to address it. It's not ever going to happen.
The interesting thing is, it does happen all the time. It happened to me, and that was a big issue. My wife unfortunately passed away, and we owned a dog, but she owned the dog, and I had to learn how to really take care of that animal. And unfortunately, he transitioned, but it's that is the most important part, because having a plan in advance is the best course of action. Nobody between, again, and I'm sorry for taking up too much time, but
Not at all.
between me and my wife, nobody thought that she was going to get sick. So of course we did not plan. And you know, at the time we were in our 40s, and we weren't thinking about that, you know, but when it happened, it was it was a shock to it was definitely a shock to me and my children, because it was like, mommy's used to walking. As a matter of fact, it was interesting because I'm walking the dog one day, and the dog just stops, and he's looking at me, wondering why I'm walking him, because that's normally mommy's thing. And I had to really sit down on the curb next to him and explain to him that mommy is in the hospital.
Yeah.
And that was hard because, you know, they're like our children. And what's interesting is, of course, you don't think they understand, but they absolutely do. You know, even though they may not be able to vocally communicate that, their actions show that they know something is amiss. I think this is a spot on conversation. Absolutely.
I'm so glad, because most people don't think that a bus is going to hit them when they're 45. However, it does. And then, you know, they aren't even sick. A bus hits them. I had a friend who passed away. He was in perfect condition, 65 years old, was a jiu-jitsu guy, like perfect, right? People who do jiu-jitsu are like my idols, right? Because they're cardio, they're this, they're that. I couldn't even possibly, with all my replacement parts, do jiu-jitsu. And he dropped dead of a heart attack. And he was my age, 65. Now that's old, but you know what I'm saying? It's sort of like, I'm sure he didn't think anything was going to happen. And you're absolutely right. It's so important that if you have a pet, that you write down what's in your brain. That's why we say address the needs of your pet. Do a brain dump. Because if you take a certain route with your dog and walk it, I always hope that people who have set up people to care for their pets in the event they get short-term, long-term sick, actually have the people meet the pets sort of a few times. So the pets are not like, who the heck are you? Where's my mother? I mean, my dog still looks at my husband like, who the heck are you? And where's my mother? But, you know, that's a given, because it's, you know, Irish setter boys are one person dogs. So it's hard for him, but he has gotten better. But you're absolutely right. If someone passes away and they've been taking care of the dogs, and it's so funny because I have so many people who say to me, oh, my kids know how to take care of the dogs. I said, did you write it down? They go, no, they know. I said, how do they know? Do they know when you give them heartworm, or if you give them heartworm? Do they know if you give them NexGard? Do they know when? Do they get hives if they have turkey? Do they know that? Do you know they don't like, one of my Irish setters hates white dogs. I don't know why she hates white dogs, but she does. Well, you have to tell somebody who's walking her, or when a white dog goes by, there's going to be fur flying, right? These are things you have to say. So I'm so glad you shared that with us, Jay, because it is so important when you live through it, you recognize that you need to know, and the dog needs to know. And it's really very, you want your dog to be your dog, and there's no way that my dog's ever going to be anybody else's dog. However, I love when he goes and stays with people, because then he doesn't feel abandoned by me, because I came back. And good news is dogs don't have a time frame. They'll still expect you to come back, but they won't give a blast. But it really is good. Jen, what did you get out of this?
No, I always get a lot, and it's always nice to listen to people. I did write an article recently about connections with our pets, so I know that Deborah, you shared it. Thank you.
And I'm going to share it on this thing as well, the link to this audio.
But so much of what you said, Jay, speaks to that, is they inherently know. They know us, they know what we're feeling. They pick up on it. One of the things I learned, I had a meeting yesterday with a woman who does a lot of litigation with the state legislature for pets, and she was telling me that the University of Connecticut, I think it's the UConn Law School, University of Connecticut Law School, actually has a program where they have students, I guess, who are assigned and advocate for pets in legal situations. And so if you call the school, they will assign a legal advocate that's looking out for its best interest in regards to situations, which I never knew. I thought that was kind of cool that they actually have a program, I guess.
Not to interrupt.
That's that litigation thing again.
Right.
Not to interrupt. Jan,
Yeah.
please give me that information. The reason why my daughter is attending UConn Law this year.
Oh, really? Oh, that's really close to me. Oh, really close to me.
She is a pet lover. So something like that would be incredible.
Well,
So definitely give me that
get in touch
information.
with me too, Jay, because there are two kinds of animal laws. So you want to be aware of them, because there's the animal welfare, animal rights, and then there's the ability to provide communication between people, which breaks down over an animal, which is why I don't litigate anymore. I mediate, because I conflict coach people who are fighting over animals so that they can keep the animal top of mind. In litigation, that's not always the case. And I have my own opinion about advocates for the animals. That's great, except that really the people who are the caregivers of the animals usually know what's best, but they get into such a conflict mentality. They can't think about being wrong. So I always say you want to get it right, not be right. And you want to get it right for the pet. And that's what's most important. And when we go into litigation, all our biases come up. We get siloed into one mindset because we want to be right. And that might not necessarily be the best for the pet. So when the advocate comes in, they don't live with that dog. They don't know that dog. They just have this set. And for me, I like to be able to talk to the people who care for the dog. I mean, animal abuse is something totally different. But if it's not animal abuse, then really the people who care for the pet are the best ones. But thanks, Jan. I'll look into that, because I'd love to go teach at University of Connecticut Law School about the other side of the animal advocacy, where you advocate for the people to really do what's best for their pets. Michelle, what are your thoughts? Because this is sort of your whole bailiwick.
I think this is great. I'd be interested in knowing more about could you, how do you advocate for keeping them together? I mean, in my line of work, it's so important. Our program, that's the planning piece is the third piece of our program. We do vet care, emergency preparedness for the pet, and then the planning. And so it's, have that first conversation with them. It's so important, just to tell them that's a hard conversation to have, but you get to decide. And if you don't, then you're not deciding. Somebody else is making that decision. And so we're kind of getting them on track, oh, okay, yeah, I never thought about that before, or I never thought of, well, my daughter.
Or I just presume my daughter will take it.
That's it, right? No, they love that dog. My daughter will take. Well, okay, but let's get something.
Yeah, let's
In
have an
my
air and
age,
let's have an air and a spare. I'm always good about an air and a spare and a spare. So you have to have three,
Yeah.
because it really is, you never know. I mean, things happen. So I'm so glad. And I'd love to help you guys figure out that planning piece and how to have that conversation with both the person with the pet and the people who they think might want to take the pet, because it's very hard for children who are helping their parents transition say, no, I'm not going to take the pet, even
Right.
though they know they can't take the pet because their kid's allergic or their apartment doesn't allow it, or maybe
Right.
they don't like the pet, whatever it is.
Right.
You really need to be able to have that honest conversation and not feel guilty about saying, not today, but thank you so much. Stephanie, I'm going to go to you. What did you get out of this?
I think it was really great to hear all the different perspectives and how I would say pet owners seem to be like most affected when it comes to certain type of maybe like crises in people's lives. I hope that the seniors as well as the pets are like definitely kept at home. And I definitely have also heard statistics that say that is what is best. So just looking at how to also best support my community and just in different ways to continue to make sure that I would say especially seniors and their pets are like getting everything that they need throughout the year.
It's so true. The opportunity to have that conversation in a way that is not so frightening, because the minute you start talking about taking somebody's pet away, they get really frightened. Or if somebody, God forbid, passes away and you have the pet, you don't know how to take care of it, that's frightening. And you really need to respect everybody's ability to step up, step in, not step up, not step in. And that's when you'll find out, okay, so that's not going to work. I have to do this. So Kathy, sorry to be last but not least, but what are you taking away tonight?
Well, I wrote down the names of a couple of things that you mentioned that I'm interested in going to and exploring more. The idea of a not-for-profit having a group of people who could help the pet owners who aren't able to, say, walk their dogs, cats, whatever it might be. There's a monumental need for that.
Yeah.
And also in terms of what Jay said about the dogs knowing something is wrong and having conversations to explain it, I think it's so important.
I do too. I think the
Yeah.
energy you pass to those pets, because they're in transition too. If you think about your own pet and you've been taking care of it forever, and then somebody comes in to take care of it because you can't, because you're short-term illness or whatever, or all of a sudden you're gone and they're with somebody else, just think of what is going on in their mind. And most of them will survive, but some of them, I mean, you see on the internet all the time where dogs are dropped off at a shelter. One dog was tied up to the door of the shelter and the people just left it. And the dog went into his kennel and he never moved. He just never even lifted up his head because they don't get it. So I absolutely agree with Jay. If you sit on the curb, which is what I would have done, and say, hey, listen, I get it. I'm sort of lost too. And we're going to have to navigate this new life without our wonderful wife and mother in a way that, it's one day at a time. And I'm with you, buddy. And, just tell me what you want. I wish mom had left me directions. However, she didn't. But I figure that, I can't do too much harm. And could you let me know if I'm screwing it up? And they will let you know. I'm sure he did, Jay, let you know when you screwed up.
Not to interrupt, yes, because first off, I'm from New Jersey, but I live now in Austin, Texas. And we had to drive from New Jersey to Austin. And first off, I must say, if anybody travels with a dog is your best friend when you travel. I'll
Yeah.
tell you that much. But it really took some time for him to get used to, because of course he's used to New Jersey, and when he had to come down here, that was interesting. in addition to dealing with the loss of my wife, he now had to deal with being displaced. And there was a dual issue in that respect.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to manage both of those. And, it is what it is. I mean, but I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this conversation because it's an area that a lot of people don't think of, and it happens. Unfortunately, it's one of those things that people only think about once it happens. There
Right.
is no proactive approach to this. It is always reactive.
Or
So,
worse, they put it in their will and then they don't die. So the bottom line is if you put all your plans for your pet in your will and you don't die, then none of the plans for your pet come to fruition. So that's why it's the MAP plan, navigating that journey short-term, long-term. Because if you're going to make a lot of people who go through my workshop, they come to it and go, Deborah, I'm all set because I have all my plans in my will. I said, well, I'm glad you know you're going to die. I said, if you don't die, all those plans in your will are not going to come to fruition. But hey, good for you. And they look at me and I go, your attorney should have told you that. Your attorney should have told you that everything that you've planned for in your will upon your death doesn't happen until you're dead. And so if your pet is only upon your death, then you really need to understand what that means. There are ways to have money and possessions transfer upon death, but you have to make it clear, and they have to make it clear for you. And most trust and estate attorneys are not yet on board. I'm working on it. I speak to trust and estate attorneys at least 3 times a month to tell them you really need to ask these questions. And if you don't want to ask these questions because it's way beyond your pay grade, right? I really don't want to know about that you feed your cat, this kind of food, and it's the only kind of food they eat, which is what my son does. And we have Jane here. It's only this food. You can't feed her any other kind of food. And I'm like, oh, shit. And of course, I bought some other kind of food because I said, that's not true. Well, she didn't eat it. So I said, okay, so he was right. She doesn't eat anything but this stuff. But how do you know? It's trial and error. I'm so glad all of you are here. I'm hopeful that you won't keep me a secret, that you'll share with your friends. Jan, I'm so glad you brought Jay. And Jay, I hope you come back and bring a friend because it really is important. And Michelle, I'm so glad you're back. And I hope some of your colleagues will come because it's so important for us to get that critical mass together to make sure that we can get the word out, especially in your neck of the woods where you're seeing older people. Oh, I see a red dog.
Yep, she just came to say hello and then looked at you and then said hi and walked out of the room.
Exactly. She doesn't like me anymore because I grind her nails, but that's another story. So I just want everybody to know that this is so important. Hi, Tonka baby. This is such an important topic. All of us are going to either face it with our parents, our aunts and uncles, ourselves. And the easier we make it for our pets to transition with us, because you write it down, and it doesn't have to be long and drawn out, the better. And if I can find people, work with people like the woman in Australia, I said to her, I'd love to work with you. I'd love to start something here because, there are 4-H and high school that can come and assist older people. It's just that we, maybe it's COVID, who knows? We just don't communicate as well as we could. And it's not because we're not wonderful people. It's because we just don't ask. And maybe if you ask, you'll say, oh, sure, I'd love to do that. So let's try to do that. Bring a friend next time. Please come back next time. It'll be the 3rd Wednesday, which is the 17th, right after my birthday. So I will be finished celebrating by then. And until then, kiss all your pets for me. I'm Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation. Don't forget to look at the Why Do Pets Matter podcast. It started up again. We had a little bit of a technical glitch, but we're up and running again. And so great programs will be coming forward. And I hope to see you all on the 17th. And until then, take care and make your MAP plan. Good night, everyone.